Welcome to Elevation Nation with your hosts Sam Panich and Parker Yablon. Elevation Nation is a community focused on bringing together young adults who are elevating themselves and others every day. Each week, we welcome a new elevator to share their story and experiences to help you conquer the real world.
What's going on, Elevation Nation? Today, Sam, I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling elevated. This is gonna be an elevated podcast right here. We got Brian Helfman. Brian, I met at an experience camps recording, an interview. Little did I know he knew my sister already. I was like, dude, I feel like I know you. Then we got introduced by another elevator, Danielle Farage. And I'm like, wait, I know that guy. We connected, immediately hit it off. Brian is literally, he just gets us, I feel like. And we get him and what he's doing. It just makes so much sense that we're about to have an awesome conversation. Brian, welcome to Elevation Nation. How's it going, brother?
Wow, Parker, thank you for the incredibly kind and generous intro. I had momentarily forgot about our how we met story, which is insane. That we were literally sitting next to each other in that recording, the guys' grief group, for experience camps that we did together. And I remember during that conversation feeling like, this guy gets it. Like, I want to hang out with this guy. And then everyone kind of had to go at the end. I remember I had to get to another experience camps call. And I don't think we exchanged contact info. And it was like, all right, I guess, maybe our paths will cross at some point again in the future. And then it must have been a couple weeks later that Danielle sent that intro email. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, I was just sitting next to this guy in the guys' grief group. So just felt, kismet, I guess is a word to describe it.
It is.
And yeah, feeling good. Excited to be chatting with you guys today. And I'm intrigued by this concept of like Elevation Nation, elevators, elevating mental fortitude in ourselves and others. So yeah, just excited to see where the conversation goes.
Well, we are excited to have you, Brian, officially as elevator number 254 on the podcast. And I think kismet is a perfect word to describe what happened. Sometimes the universe brings people into your lives or has you cross paths with them and it doesn't work. And it's like, no. You really need to meet this person. And you get introduced or reintroduced 2 or 3 other different ways. And like, I know I wasn't the one involved, but I felt that like sign from the universe a little bit like, Parker, we have to talk to this guy. Like, obviously, there's something there that we're aligned with. And so I'm so grateful, Brian. Parker has talked you up, man. I'm so excited to hang out with you. Before we get into everything, obviously, Parker and I have done our research on you. But for Elevation Nation, we like to start the podcast with a little elevator pitch. Why don't you tell the people who you are?
Yeah, so again, name's Brian Helfman. I'm the founder and chief experience officer at Third Nature. And at Third Nature, we do an adult summer camp weekend, which we've been doing. This will be our 11th summer doing adult summer camp weekends. We used to do more. Now we just do one every summer. I can share why we went back to just doing one every summer, but it's Labor Day weekend in upstate New York at the camp that I grew up going to, Camp Scatico. And outside of that, we do community events, meetups, workshops, mostly in New York City, events for the summer camp community to stay connected year round. And then in hosting, designing, facilitating retreats over the last 11 years, I realized that we had this kind of special sauce that we could translate into a leadership development program, which we've brought to other companies, universities. So we have a teacher to facilitator training program for college faculty. basically helping teachers transform from a content-first approach to a more experience-driven approach, making educational experiences feel more connected. Could talk your ears off about that. But that's another program that we've built over the last few years that we've had some good success with. And again, just conscious leadership trainings for other companies and organizations that get it, that want to create more connected experiences for their people. Outside of Third Nature, I forget if this was mentioned while we were recording or before we started recording, but obviously we all have experience camps as a point of connection. So I have been a volunteer at the kids camp in Pennsylvania for the last 10 years, started in 2016. And in 2021, because I was doing adult summer camps of my own, when Experience Camps was finally ready to build out their own adult program, they kind of tapped me and my good friend Dan Wolfson and said, do you guys want to kind of take Experience Camps for the adults, aka FTA, and run with it, kind of, bring it to life? And we said, hell yeah. That was in 2021. So I've been doing that for 5 years. This year officially joined the HQ team in a part-time capacity as adult programs manager. So have another 2 adult summer camp weekends, adult grief camps that I lead through Experience Camps. That's kind of like the rundown of probably not everything I do, but we'll start there.
I mean, I think, Sam, I know what you're thinking. And Elevation Nation, if you've been on this journey since the beginning, or even the journey in the last couple of weeks with us, Brian's basically living the life that Sam and I want to live full time, right? We still work as consultants, but he's working and making elevation happen through his own stuff with Third Nature, but also his work with Experience Camps. So Brian, I mean, we're pumped to get into it all. I'm really curious, though. Forget all the work stuff. Forget your like today. When you were like walking around at Camp Scatico, as a camper, you're walking on the bunk line during the summer, what was the dream job? Like, how did you envision you'd spend your life?
I love this question, and I'll answer it 2 different ways. So one thing I loved about being a kid at camp, not like an adult at camp tapping into their inner child. I still feel like a kid at camp to this day. But as an actual kid at camp between, ages 8 and 15, when I was a camper at Scatico, I wasn't thinking at all about what I wanted to be when I grow up. I was so engrossed in the present moment. It was all about purposeless play. And the play felt purposeful, like in the moment, right? Like, I want to win this basketball game. I want to win Color War. I want to be a Color War captain. I want to take home the trophy at this intercamp, this tournament. I want to support my friend in need. But, zooming out, we were in this beautiful contained bubble that is camp, and able to, try and fail and learn and grow and do it in a relatively inconsequential environment, right? Where you're safe to do all those things, to try and fail and learn and grow. And it wasn't about what do you want to be when you grow up? It's who do you want to be today? And maybe even more so, just let your authentic self shine without even needing to be super intentional about, how do I want to show up today? I always felt like the other 10 months of the year, at school, I was, a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. I felt like a fish out of water. Never quite feeling at home on the traditional path. And, people refer to it as factory model education, right? Being trained for the 9 to 5. I was diagnosed with ADHD in 6th grade. put on Concerta, ADHD medication, and really made to again, jam that square peg into this round hole. Whereas at camp, I felt like I was able to just be myself. It was always a place where I was able to be the most me. So, when it came time to think about where do I want to host shared experiences for entrepreneurial minded people that enable them to be their true full selves and connect in ways that they're not connecting in their day to day, camp was the obvious choice. I realized I want to bring people to the place where I've always felt the most me so they could be the most them. And but when I was a kid going to camp, I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams doing what I'm doing now. If you had actually asked me, so I'll answer in another way. If you had actually asked me when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, like what I wanted to be when I grow up, maybe when I was 8 years old, I still had the illusion that maybe I could make it to the NBA, or be a professional athlete of some sort. And then when I realized that was probably not realistic, I thought maybe I could find a career in sports, perhaps influenced by the show Entourage, which I'm sure you guys remember. I thought maybe I could be a sports agent. I even interned at Excel Sports Management during college for Jeff Schwartz, who's an NBA agent. Thought maybe that would be my path. So to answer your question, it was continuously trying to figure out, how can I apply my passions, my interests, what I'm good at, and turn it into a career. But again, when I was a kid, I never could have imagined doing what I'm doing now. I didn't have the vocabulary for it. I didn't have any role models that were doing anything similar to what I'm doing now. It kind of happened by accident, and I'm so grateful to have kind of accidentally wound up on this path.
It's a question that literally Parker and I talked about today, which was about our dream jobs. And I think at 30 years old, Brian, I'm still struggling to know what I want to do with my life. And I think younger Sam, you just pick some random thing and you're like, oh, sure, I'll do that. You don't know the day-to-days of what you're good at yet, what you like to do. Some of these dream jobs that you think are amazing, similar to yourself, I interned at a sports analytics company. It was sick. I was around sports all the time. I'm not good at math. It made the job really hard. There are things that you learn through experience and you kind of adjust on the fly. And as Parker alluded to earlier, I think you are living a beautiful life that Parker and I are working our way up towards. And so I commend you and I give you a lot of credit because I think a lot of people, no matter their age, they might have this inkling of where they want to go and never act on it, right? Whether that's societal norms telling them you can't do that, financial pressures saying that that can't lead to a life that you want to live. And so I think so often, one of the things that we talk about at Elevation Nation that we try to preach to young people is this concept of introspection through mental fortitude. Take a step back and figure out who Sam, Parker, and Brian actually authentically are at their core. And as Parker and I have toured around the country speaking with more and more young people that went to school during COVID and now have graduated into the real world, they are struggling immensely with knowing who they are as individuals, more so than I think any of us have dealt with in our lives. And so I want to go back to, you said camp was the place where you could be yourself. And I think for people that have been at camp or around camp like us in this world, it's a no-brainer. But could you try your best? This is an impossible task. But could you try your best to explain why you think authenticity happens in nature, outdoors, at a camp-like environment?
Absolutely. There's a lot I could say about this. One, we are nature. I mean that quite literally, right? We humans have created so much separation between ourselves and nature, right? We're all sitting indoors right now, right? And I look out my window and I see trees and grass, and I got the ocean behind me. And we're like, I have an app that literally, it's called Nature Dose. It measures like how much time I spend in nature every day. These are the kinds of things that we use in modern day life to, remind ourselves to like get outside and spend time in nature because we know it's good for us. But I take that a step further. Did you know? I'll ask you guys a question. If you were to guess, and maybe you've heard this stat before, but if you were to guess, what percentage of time does the average American spend indoors? Can you take a guess?
90%.
Yeah,
God,
it's
that's so sad.
93%.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
93%. So, and when you think about that, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like most people sleep for 8 hours a day indoors, right? That's a third of the day right there. If you're working indoors, that's another third of the day. So 2/3 of your day already between sleep and work is likely like pretty confined to indoors. So, work, sleep, time in a car, right? Commuting on the subway. You go out with your friends, you're at a bar, you're at a restaurant. It makes sense, right? That maybe only 7% of our time on average would be outside. And the metrics in my Nature Dose app back this up. Even for me, someone who's like very intentional about spending time outside. But our ancestors, they spent 100% of their time outside, right? There was no indoors for 99% of human history. Like the idea of being indoors didn't make sense. Like again, in modern society, we've created all this separation between ourselves and nature such that we spend only 7% of our time outside. But we are animals. Like we are meant to be outside. And I think spending time in nature brings out our authentic selves because we remember we are part of nature. And with that, we can see ourselves in nature quite literally, right? Like we go on a hike, go to camp, you see yourself, you experience yourself in nature, and you start to get back in touch with who you naturally are and have always been, your inner nature. And also I think, this separation between humans and nature has been happening for hundreds of years, getting worse and worse. But in the last few decades, we've also started to create more separation between ourselves and others, other humans, right? Now it's more likely that we live alone or in small family units. There are so many articles and studies out there that talk about the decline of club participation, religious participation, all these different ways we used to come together in community. But I mentioned how nature is a mirror. Other people are mirrors as well, right? We learn about ourselves through interaction with others, right? Seeing ourselves, experiencing ourselves in different contexts, surrounded by different environments, right? Different nature and different kinds of people. Seeing how different kinds of people live opens up our minds to the different possibilities for ourselves. So this separation that we've created between ourselves and others and ourselves and nature, I think, is part of the systemic assault on authenticity that's been happening for decades. And spending time in nature with people like you guys, right? People who get it, who are there to inspire and be inspired, or just people who are willing to, connect, learn, and grow, I think is a great way to get back in touch with your authentic self.
I love everything you just said there. I literally wrote in my show notes to Sam, like, Fantastic take. It's such an interesting take. You know, we've talked with so many people in the wellness space. We've talked with people who lead big companies and manage a lot of people. And I think the perspective that you have is the one that we agree with the most. That for someone to be truly authentic in themselves, they have to get outside of the normal environments, like the work environments we work in, the homes that we live in, but also the routines with our phones and how much we rely on technology now as the way in which we connect with each other instead of meeting in person. We connect through our phone and we use that as an outlet because it's comfortable, it's safe, and it's easy. That's another piece. But for us at Elevation Nation, I mean, this is why we love speaking at camp too, is like truly, if we're talking about being authentic, we're talking about being real in ourselves. Camp, outdoors, whatever you name it, that is the place to be able to do that. And so I just am so grateful that you said that point, and I'm glad Elevation Nation can hear it from someone else because it couldn't be more aligned with our philosophy and what we believe with at Elevation Nation. So, Brian, I mean, you've been doing this. You obviously don't become a professional athlete. You go to university. I know you had a little stint in the corporate world. What happened? How did you
Yeah, good question. I mentioned kind of ending up on this path by accident, and that's partially true. But my path shifted, if I'm being honest, when my dad died. So it was 2012. I was working at CBS doing ad sales. Like you mentioned, corporate America, could have seen myself at that job for 5-10 years, climbing the corporate ladder in the ad sales world. And yeah, honestly, enjoyed that job. Felt like I was good at it, was doing well, was making money, living in New York City, figuring it out, like pretty average 23-year-old. But when my dad died, it was really this worldview shattering event for me. My dad always preached this idea that I think was inherited, that he inherited from his parents, who inherited it from their parents, that basically thought of work as a means to an end, right? Work is not meant to be enjoyed. Work is not meant to be meaningful. Work is meant to be a source of providing security, right? And the goal of this game is to acquire as many resources, right? As much wealth as possible, so that if you're lucky, you can retire early and enjoy, as my dad might say, the back nine of your life. My dad was a big golfer, and this was his dream, right? He worked in a family business, did really well, and wanted to retire early so that, again, he could enjoy the back nine of his life, so he could play golf, so he could hang out with his friends, so he could, live the dream. And for what it's worth, my dad loved life. He had a lot of fun with friends. He had a great group of friends. Definitely had a lot of fun, like, before he started working. But for most of my childhood, he was out of bed at 5 a.m. On the Long Island Railroad from Syosset, Long Island to New York City, every single morning, 5 days a week, home in time for dinner, but exhausted, right? So he spent the prime hours during the prime years of his life grinding at this job that he certainly didn't love, in order to, again, maybe enjoy some nights, weekends, and the back nine of his life. But as I mentioned, he was diagnosed with cancer at around age 50 and passed away at 55. So when I saw how he lived, and especially the end of his life, I decided at age 23 for myself that I didn't want to spend the prime hours of the prime years of my life you know, working as a means to an end, working solely for a paycheck, in hopes that I can enjoy my life outside of work, right? I say the prime hours of the prime years of our lives. Let me ground that. Most of us are working 9 to 5, 10 to 6, 8 to 8, whatever, right? But it's the heart of the day. Age, 21, 22, 23, potentially to 65, 70, 75. You're telling me that prime time of your life is supposed to be spent just focused on, doing what you got to do to get by, to get a paycheck. I have nothing against making money, by the way. Like, I want to make plenty of it. But I knew that back then, after my dad died, I wanted to do it in a way that also leveraged my unique gifts, my strengths, my superpowers, and enabled me to do work that, again, I don't always enjoy it, right? Like, no matter what career you choose, no matter what job you have, like, there's going to be shit that you have to deal with. It's, going to suck sometimes, but I do love it as a whole. Like, when I zoom out and think about what I do for a living and look at, like, the career and life I've built, I have so much fulfillment because I'm doing what I want to be doing. It's very self-directed. I have the freedom to make my own schedule. And yes, like, I work hard, I work a lot. But I think the deepest fulfillment comes from accomplishing difficult tasks, but specifically difficult tasks that you've chosen for yourself, that you're intrinsically motivated to do. So anyway, I can articulate all that now. At age 23, I was like starting to figure this out, but didn't know exactly, what I wanted to do with my life. So, but I knew I wanted to get out of that corporate job and, take some time to figure it out. So after a few months of this kind of exploration, I quit my job at CBS and spent a winter as a ski instructor in Colorado. Again, was just like, why not? Like, let's do this for a winter. I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life, but this seems like a cool thing to do for the next 6 months. And it was there that I realized, growing up, my mom always said I would be a great teacher, to which I responded, teachers don't make enough money. Again, this like inherited, conditioned, second nature way of like thinking about work showing up there. But in Colorado, I realized teaching doesn't have to mean standing in front of a classroom, teaching in the way that I was taught in traditional school. It could be leading kids around the mountain, giving them a transformational experience, teaching them how to ski. And I didn't think I wanted to do that for the rest of my life either. But again, just opening my mind to the different possibilities of what teaching could entail. You guys are teaching, right? Every time you have a keynote, every time you visit a camp and speak and do a workshop for council orientation, like, you're teaching in your own way, right? I didn't realize that there were all these different, what's the word? Modalities of teaching.
Alternatives, yeah.
Yeah. So, but still, like, again, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Came back from Colorado, took another corporate job, again, for like the safety, security. Thought maybe it was back in like the sports world, thought maybe that was it for me, but hated it. Eventually started my first business, which was called Tabs. Thought maybe that would be, I just was like drawn to this idea, and like was at a stage of my life where I was like determined to get something off the ground, build something of my own. Even if I wasn't sure like that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. The greatest thing that came from that first business was I started to kind of connect and build a community of fellow entrepreneurs living in New York City, and kept coming across this common pain point that essentially boiled down to lack of community, feeling misunderstood in your existing circles. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? But feeling the gratification that came when connecting with fellow entrepreneurs, pursuing a non-traditional path. And that's when the light bulb went off. What if I could put together a retreat for entrepreneurs? Very simple idea at first. And, try to land this plane because, make a long story short here. Me and my co-founder at the time were able to get, and again, at the time, it was just cool idea. Let's try it. The first startup island trip off the ground. So we did a retreat for college entrepreneurs in Costa Rica in March 2016. Somehow, without any experience doing this kind of thing, we're able to get 16 college students signed up for that first trip. And it was halfway through that week, after a student-led workshop, where I was like, okay, this is it. Some combination, and I, again, couldn't articulate this at the time, but I just felt like I was in my element. I felt elevated. I felt like this was the work I was meant to do. This combination of experience design, facilitation, leadership, speaking, bringing people together, the things that I had kind of always been doing in informal, unpaid capacities my entire life. I finally, again, kind of accidentally found myself doing at age 26, 27. And it was then that I decided I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I know it's going to continue to evolve. It was called Startup Island then. It's called Third Nature now. But I just felt something that week where I was like, all right, this is it. Let's figure out how to turn this into a real career. But again, if I can kind of sum it up, it was a lot of just following my intuition, doing things that felt right in the moment, without overthinking it, without thinking where is this headed? It's much easier to connect the breadcrumbs looking back. At the time, I didn't really know where it was all headed. But I'm so grateful that I said yes to all these different kind of seeds that were planted for me that just felt right at the time.
Well, planting seeds throughout your entire career led you back to nature, and in this case, third nature. And I think sometimes, Parker and I, we have to remind ourselves that we don't exactly know where we're going. But we say if we continue to be good people, try to make the world a better place, keep meeting amazing humans, we're going to look back and go, oh my gosh, how funny was it that we had this person on the pod, led us to this person, led to this speaking gig, and then we started this business. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. And I think so often it's so difficult for young people who we want that moment of, oh shit, this is what I'm supposed to do. Or yes, it all worked out. But oftentimes those moments don't happen until you're so deep in it, looking back and reflecting on the nostalgia of the grind. And so for the young people out there listening, going, Brian, that story is incredible, but I'm stuck in a 9-to-5 and I don't see a path out and I don't know where I'm going and I don't know what I'm good at or my passions. I think the thing that I say, and I'm saying this pretty much to myself here, is to give yourself some grace. Give yourself some time to figure it out. Keep doing good things, keep doing the right things, keep exploring what you like to do and what you're good at. And eventually, hopefully, you'll plant enough seeds to have your own thing at one point. And I want to talk about third nature because so often we hear the concept, Brian, oh, that's second nature to me, right? Sam and Parker are good podcasters. It's second nature to them. You took it a step further, third nature. Explain to us how you got that name from obviously your original Startup Island work, and we got the third nature now.
Yeah, that was beautifully teed up. I appreciate it, Sam. And I'll get to the second nature, third nature piece. But first, just to give a little context. So between 2016 and 2020, we were Startup Island. We had an alternative spring break program for college entrepreneurs, which I mentioned. First trip was in March 2016. By 2018, we were doing 4 cohorts. We got to the point where we were doing 5 cohorts per year. Different schools with different spring break weeks would come into Costa Rica for a week each. Me and my co-founder and our small team would be planted in Costa Rica for like 2 months. It was amazing. We were doing adult summer camp weekends. Back then it was Startup Island Summer Camp. And I mentioned, I think before we started recording, we did workshops on college campuses across the Northeast, kind of like a college campus tour, maybe a little similar to the summer camp tour that you guys just embarked on, or I should say disembarked from. But we pretty quickly started to expand outside of just startup folks, outside of just entrepreneurs. We started saying it's not necessarily about being the CEO of a business, it's about being the CEO of your life, right? Taking ownership of your life and designing your life such that, your work, your relationships, your hobbies, your habits, your routines are aligned with who you are and what you want. But the Startup Island brand was holding us back. People saw the messaging and the videos and the content and connected with people who had been and were like, oh, this sounds like it's for me, but like I'm not a startup person, I'm not in the startup world. We used to get questions like, do people get voted off the island? Like different associations with Startup Island that didn't necessarily work for us, weren't really doing us any favors. But we always had the next trip that we were planning. And we were building brand equity around Startup Island. And so we had always thought about rebranding, but never did it until COVID, because COVID forced us to stop, right? We canceled all our trips, or we had our first 2 spring break trips that year, but had to cancel our last 3. This was March 2020. Had to cancel our summer camp weekends that year. And it sucked, right? But looking back, it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it gave us the opportunity to again, step back, zoom out, go into a hibernation period and think about how we want to come out of this experience. And the rebrand just made so much sense. So in the exploration of potential names, this idea of third nature came up. And, we were thinking about what does it mean when something becomes second nature? Well, it becomes automatic, right? Habitual. And things becoming second nature is a good thing. It saves you time and energy when something becomes a habit. The problem is when things become second nature that you don't want to be habits, that you don't want to be automatic, right? And this applies more to ways of being. I mentioned the inherited way of thinking about work that was probably passed down generation to generation from my dad to me, that said work is a means to an end. It was second nature for my dad and for me to think, work isn't about enjoyment. It's not about meaning making. It's about money making. And it's supposed to suck. And it's a game that you play, and the winners are the ones who are able to, again, acquire the most resources, the most financial security. That was my second nature way of thinking about work. But after my dad died, I was able to kind of zoom out and more consciously, intentionally, in a more third nature way, think about, how do I want to relate to work? What do I want to believe about work? There's this great book that I just read that is basically like third nature in a nutshell. It's called Useful, Not True by, you would know his
Derek
name.
Sivers.
There you go. Thank you. Derek Sivers. talks about how like none of our thoughts and beliefs, really very few things in life are objectively true, but we can choose thoughts and beliefs that are useful for us. That's what being third nature is all about. We all have these second nature, conditioned, automatic, habitual thoughts, beliefs, ways of showing up in the world. And if some of those ways are working for you, great. Like consciously, intentionally, in a third nature way, choose to keep those ways of being second nature, right? Embrace it. But if those ways of being, those thoughts and beliefs aren't working for you, you have the power to shift, to say, I'm ready to let this go and adopt a new belief. And that example I shared about like the shift in the way I think about work is just one of like countless examples that I could share. You know, this applies to the way you relate to your friends, the way you relate to your romantic partner. I hate when people say, oh, that's just the way I am, right? If that's working for you, great. But if not, again, you can take a step back and learn how to shift into a new way of being that helps you build and live the life that you actually want. We are not set in stone. We are ever evolving beings. And third nature is all about, again, choosing ways of being that enable us to ultimately love life more.
It's beautiful. I feel like during college, Sam, Startup Island would be right up our alley, first of all. And I wish in 2016, when we were juniors in college, trying to figure out what that business idea was, that we found and came across Startup Island. And then to the point of Derek Sivers, I've read one of his other books, Hell Yeah or No. It's a good one. I'm glad that you like this new one because I'm going to pick it up. It's fascinating, Brian. I love the concept and the analogy of third nature. And I think it resonates so much with Sam and myself. We had a great conversation during the tour about evolving, right? We weren't just talking about evolving ourselves. We were talking about how we evolve, let's call it our keynote. And our keynote continues to evolve because it has to, right? The people we're speaking to are different. We're speaking to all girls camps, all boys camps, co-ed camps, a camp that's in the middle of nowhere, a camp that's close to a city. That's a simple example of how we can evolve it. And we're not confined to the way that we've done it before 50 times. And that's the way we think about when we go then talk to each other. It's like, just because you feel something right now doesn't mean it can't change. Just because the way it's been doesn't mean it's the way it has to be. And so I love all of your perspective and your philosophy on life and what you do at Third Nature. Walk us through a little bit more about like what a Third Nature activity looks like. If we went to one of your workshops, like what's a framework that you use to help people ground themselves, to know who they are better and what they want out of life better and what inspires them?
At Third Nature Summer Camp, one of the first workshops we do on day one is called Being Third Nature. And I mentioned earlier how nature and other humans can be mirrors. So what we do, being third nature, obviously we're at camp first and foremost. So the nature part is kind of taken care of. And we put people in what we call GPS groups. GPS stands for Good Peep Squad. And we curate these groups based on all the information that we receive from people before camp in their applications, their pre-camp questionnaires. We ask very intentional questions that will enable us to put people in groups of 4 or 5 with others that are like-minded, like-hearted, like-valued. And we ask a series of questions. They're different every year, but they're all meant to help people reflect on life, the summer, right? We do this Labor Day weekend. So, treat it as kind of like a summer reflection, little more than halfway through the year reflection, but also a life reflection, right? Get people journaling, going inward first and foremost, and thinking through, again, thoughtful, intentional prompts that speak to, questions like, what was a time recently when you felt most alive? what kinds of people are you with during those moments? What kind of environments are you in? What really matters to you? Why does what really matters to you matter to you? Questions like that. Then again, have everyone in their GPS group share with one another. And, when people start sharing and going around the horn, responding to pretty simple, but potentially deep and thought provoking questions like those, with like minded, like hearted, like valued people, they start to see themselves in others, right? We know intimately our own lived experience. We always say at Third Nature, everyone's an expert in their experience. No one on the planet has the same unique combination of lived experience and personality that you have. So everyone has something to teach, right? Because like you've experienced things and you are things that I can't imagine. And everyone has something to learn because when you're in a group like that, hearing about the unique lived experience of others can really, like we discussed earlier, expand your perspective, right? Get you out of the context that you came from, that you're used to, the people that you're typically surrounded by, the environment that you're typically in. And it gets people thinking differently right off the bat, and clearer on, again, their unique gifts, their core values. And then we use what comes up during that Being Third Nature workshop when people are with their GPS groups and give people the rest of the weekend to practice it, right? To try it on. If something came up for you in that workshop that says, oh, like, I have a unique gift around speaking or listening or, really acknowledging and validating others or making people feel special or distilling someone else's, verbose rant into a concise insight, right? You get to spend the rest of the weekend after having that acknowledged and validated by your GPS group, experimenting with that, trying it on in all these different contexts, different workshops, different activities. And then at the end of the weekend, our last workshop is bringing camp home, right? So how do you integrate the learnings from camp and, take these unique gifts that you experienced in yourself over the course of the weekend home to move your world closer to the kind of world that you want to live in? That's Third Nature Summer Camp in a nutshell. In between, this year we'll have workshops like Movement as Medicine, Unlocking Human Creativity in an AI-Obsessed World, Radical Connection, Constellations, which is all about lifestyle design and involves role play and can be really powerful. We actually just posted about this on our Instagram, so can read the caption there to learn more about that workshop. But just, again, I think getting people out of their day-to-day environment into nature with like-minded, like-hearted, like-valued people, not just going deep and reflecting and journaling and, having these kinds of conversations, but also playing. The combination of depth and play, I think, really helps illuminate for people, again, who they are, what they want, their unique gifts, the kind of world that they want to live in. And we're very intentional about helping people apply that tangibly to their life back home. Again, I could talk your ears off about camp, but I think that kind of hopefully sums it up.
This is the first of many conversations we are going to be having to continue to talk about camp, to continue to support each other as our missions are so aligned. There's so many different ways that we can get people outside of their comfort zones to elevate themselves and elevate their mindsets. And I love some of those ideas. I promise I won't steal them without giving you credit first. But there are so many ways that you can just make people think in a different way. And by going into a different environment and then doing different types of activities that they've just haven't done probably since grade school, maybe high school, maybe college, it allows them to go back into that childlike state. And I think really access that piece of authenticity that all of us as humans are looking for. And so I love that, Brian. I want to move us into our rapid fire segment of the podcast here. We have a couple quick hitting questions we want to ask you. First thing that comes to mind, no right or wrong answers. I'll start us off. What's the best camp activity of all time?
Whoa. I got it. College Bowl capture the flag at Camp Scatico, the camp I mentioned that I grew up going to and was a counselor at. College Bowl, it's not, color war is like really intense. College at the end of the summer, College Bowl's at the beginning of the summer, like much more chill and fun. But like College Bowl capture the flag is maybe like the most intense game of the intense activity of the summer. I have stories about College Bowl capture the flag, but yeah, we'll save that. That's my answer. Easy.
I can't imagine some of the throws or whatever, the tackles, the oh my god, last minute or we're down. I can't imagine. That's the beauty of camp. It's amazing. All right, next rapid fire. At my camp, we had rope burn, and we would do like intros. Like everyone would get their own song, like they're coming out for like a WWE type of like thing. What's your come out song? If you're doing rope burn, you got to hype up everyone, but hype yourself up more importantly.
Oh my God. The first song that came to mind is Kicking the Door by Biggie Smalls. Let's go with that. It's not necessarily like my favorite song or my come out song for like Third Nature Summer Camp, but for the rope burn, it feels appropriate.
Okay. I'm about it. I love it.
Or Fireman by Lil Wayne to be a little less subtle.
Another great one. We love camp. Camp is beautiful. Camp food, sometimes less beautiful. Is there a camp food that you absolutely love, Brian? And is there a camp food that you actually hate?
Yes, obviously, to both. So camp food I love, Bang Bang Chicken at Camp Equinunk, where we do experience camps for the adults and Pennex for the kids. It's delicious. A meal I look forward to every summer. And Scatico has great food too. That's where we do Third Nature Summer Camp, Labor Day weekend, and they did this like turkey panini once that was just like, it tasted like it was from like a legit deli. It was delicious. Least favorite camp food. So camp food's gotten a lot better. I think maybe not at every camp, but at Scatico since when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was not great. And so you asked least favorite. It was none of it was good. But you know when they would do like barbecue night and you get the just like the super well done burgers, the like burnt burgers that are like bent and just like mass cooked, and they come in the tin foil, and you know they're on like the dry stale like buns, and they've like shriveled up because they were cooked so long. Yeah, not great.
I know exactly what you're saying. I think Sam needs to learn a little bit more about that. Maybe I'll have to make one for you, Sam, at Midwex this summer. I'm very much able to do that. I love it, Brian, and I agree with you. Camp food has been getting better, especially on our camp tour. I did a food review, and all the camps like brought out their A game. I got like a Reuben at one of the camps, and it was top notch. Like I couldn't make it that good, and I've been to a good amount of places in the city, and like I'm gonna say it was. I'm not saying it's better. It was on par. It was so freaking good, and this is just a chef from the middle of New Hampshire cooking up some Reubens. You gotta love it.
Let's go. Love to hear that.
Unreal.
And
Brian,
I gotta see this. Was the food review? Is that? Can I see that? Is that like on Instagram?
Of course, it's on Instagram.
Yeah. Nice. I'll check that out.
It's a fun thing we did. Last question for you, Brian. This is not a rapid fire, but we do ask every single person who's joined Elevation Nation, whether that be through over 500 episodes of the podcast or the tens of thousands of people we've spoken to at our Elevation Nation keynotes. Everyone gets a mental motto. It's a phrase, a quote, a slogan that you lead your life by. It embodies your mental fortitude. So, Brian, obviously, we are so curious. What's your mental motto?
So I didn't make this up by any means. In fact, this motto has been recited by many people wiser than me, far wiser than me, for thousands of years. And that motto is Memento Mori. I mentioned this path that I'm on now was kind of catalyzed by my dad's death and this awareness of the finality of life and the impermanence of life. And Memento Mori is Latin. It literally translates to remember death or remember you will die. And that might sound morbid to some, but the idea and in ancient Rome, the Stoics lived by this because it enabled them to live life to the fullest. When you remember that you will die and you come to terms with your own mortality, you stop wasting time. I think in our modern world, I mentioned we've created a lot of separation between ourselves and nature, between ourselves and others. We've also created a lot of separation between ourselves and death. And, most of the time that's a good thing, right? Things like infant mortality are down, right? Like we're less likely, especially in like a privileged Western, American society. Most people listening to this, are probably not coming face to face with death as much as our ancestors did, right? But as all of us know through our work with experience camps, Sam, I don't know as much of your personal story as I know of Parker's, just from, the guys' grief group that we were a part of. But, Parker, I know, like, you and I both have experienced the death of someone very close to us. And that sucks, right? And I do think that there can be a gift in it, in that when you come to know death, when you come to understand, again, the impermanence of life intimately. Obviously, we all know that we're going to die, but it's not something we meditate on. And that's kind of what Memento Mori is all about, like literally meditating on death in a way that propels you towards living a more authentic, full life. I'll wrap this up by sharing this idea from I think her name's Bronnie Ware. She wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. She worked in palliative care, so connected with, got to know so many people literally on their deathbed. And she asked them all kinds of questions and ultimately wrote a book on the top 5 regrets of people on their deathbed after, connecting with thousands of people in hospice care. And I think number one was, I wish I lived a life more, I wish I lived a more authentic life. I wish I lived more true to who I am and what I wanted, instead of, trying to make everyone else happy, trying to please everyone else. It talks about the value of relationships. I wish I didn't worry so much. I wish I didn't work so much, right? These are things that become clear to people on their deathbed. But I think for me, when my dad died, these were things that became clear then, and things that I've tried to hold on to and not forget by practicing this concept of Memento Mori. And for anyone listening, you can read more about it. Just Google Memento Mori, go down the rabbit hole, and, can kind of reframe your whole perspective on death and in turn life. So that's my mental motto, because I think that has, again, propelled me down the path that I'm on, and will continue to inspire me to live life to the fullest, have fun, prioritize relationships, do good work, make a positive impact on others in the world at large, and have more conversations like this.
A beautiful mental motto, a beautiful conversation with an incredible new elevator. Brian, welcome to Elevation Nation. We are so honored to have gotten an hour of your time to hang out. I'm jealous that you guys got to hang out in person. We're going to have to do that together soon. But on behalf of Parker, myself, and Elevation Nation, thank you for just being an incredible human being, making the world a better place and inspiring, at the very least, us, but I know many listeners out there as well. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. If I can say one thing that I've been wanting to do for 10 years that I have not done, it's start a podcast. So you guys are an inspiration to me.
Let's go.
And I know so many others. I'm so impressed with your consistency. You said I was guest number 254 or something. That is incredible. And I love the kinds of conversations that you're broadcasting, and the world needs to hear it. So keep up the good work.
We appreciate you. All right, Elevation Nation. Until next week, peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Elevation Nation. If you enjoyed our conversation, hit that subscribe button to get notified when we release a new episode. If you would like to join Elevation Nation or get more information about the nation, please visit our website at www.elevationnation.io. Until next week, Elevation Nation, peace.